Senator Dianne Feinstein joining me now. Senator, thank you very much for being with us. You know the intelligence community so well, being the outgoing chair, ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. Let's talk about the relationship between Donald Trump and the intelligence community. He's not getting off on a good basis, having really dismissed with some contempt the need for the presidential daily briefing and saying that these are the same people who brought you the Iraq WMD false reporting. What would your advice be to him about how to handle intelligence?
My advice to him would be to take the briefings. I think they're extraordinarily important. First of all, they do give you a bit of history. They do give you a context of the problem. And when you do them frequently, daily, every other day, you see changes. You can ask questions of briefers. And that's important because you're going to get an informed view. And the people that brief the president brief him in things that we do not necessarily know on intelligence because the PDF, the Presidential Daily Brief, is something that is for the president only, and it is not part of the regular intelligence transmission to the committees of the House and the Senate. So it is very important. And then who briefs is important. Their body language is important. What they say is important. And they are very careful. So I would hope that the president would reconsider that there is a history and there is a need of the brief with respect to North Korea, and what they are doing with nuclear, with the South China Seas and what China is doing there, with the Middle East and Syria and ISIL and the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrian government. And there is with the history of Russia. And that may be a history of which the president-elect is not fully familiar. And I think in dealing with a country like Russia, a huge power, it is really important that you have the context that an intelligence brief gives to the President of the United States.
Now, he has chosen to be, for his Secretary of State, someone who is really in his own mold, a global business leader. Aides describe Rex Tillerson as Trumpian. Someone who goes his own way, who doesn't have experience in government. That's unusual for a Secretary of State to designate. But at the same time, it's someone who is very close to Vladimir Putin as a matter of business, who was there 6 months ago and was criticized for that by the Assistant Secretary of State from the podium for going to that conference in Moscow. And also someone who has cut deals with the Kurds and people, countries around the world. Are these issues that are of concern to you with a nominee for Secretary of State?
Well, of course it's an issue. I certainly don't know this gentleman. His life working experience has been with Exxon. I'm told he's very well thought of in the business community. But soft power, diplomacy, is a very specific use. And the history and the context and what predecessors have done, all of that, to understand history is to prevent a lot of the bad from happening in the future. So, that's the surprise to me, that there isn't the understanding of the role that fact and history plays in some of these appointments. So we'll see. At least, he's a new book for, I think, most of the Senate, because it's very hard to see the CEO of a big oil conglomerate as Secretary of State. But we'll see. He may surprise us all.
And the New York Times has an extensive investigation into how the hacking from Russia occurred and how warnings from an FBI man to the DNC were overlooked, not followed up by either the FBI or the DNC. And so the Russians had 7 months of unfettered access to the DNC computer systems at the beginning of this whole episode. What has this taught us, and what concerns do you have about that?
Let me say what I think I can say. I have tried to be able to tell you the number of times I've received classified briefs and from whom, and I'm told I can't say that because it's classified. But assume that that's the case, and assume that a number of top people have briefed a number of members of the Senate, and I'm sure members of the House. I can tell you what my belief is. I believe this is an incident of foreign espionage. I believe it's a classic covert operation, which Russia has performed before on other countries. I believe it is interference in our election, and I believe it is an effort to dirty up one of the candidates. And that's a quote. And that candidate was the Democratic candidate for President of the United States. It was emails related to Democrats that were released to the tune of 800, 3,000 a day over a period of time. There is no, well, I won't say there's no evidence. At least I don't see at this time any interference with the actual election process because I haven't had that briefing. But with the campaigns, with the Democratic committee, I do see that. Senator Cardin, Senator Leahy, and I strongly believe that there should be a 9/11 type outside examination of this. When I've talked to various Republicans about it, there is a kind of disagreement that anything bad happened. For me, it is really an act of foreign espionage, and it has to be dealt with. And the most important part is who sanctioned this? How did it come about? How did it happen? And we must know that because, in my view, our relationship with Russia depends on it.
Well, there's a lot of public reporting that both the FSB and then the GRU, two separate, one military, one non-military, supposedly, from Russia, were both involved. And you have a former KGB/FSB intelligence officer in Vladimir Putin. Is it credible that anything of this nature could have happened without him knowing?
I'll say this. It is very credible at this point in time. Without him knowing, I doubt it. But it is very credible that your statement is correct.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about the torture, so-called torture report. Are you disappointed that President Obama is not declassifying it, but is instead placing it in his presidential records, which will keep it sealed for at least more than a decade?
Of course I am. You know, not be the most opportune time because individual cases are pending. I've been worried about an effort to destroy the report, and the president, by putting it in his personal archives, prevents that from happening, and also means that it will be declassified in, I think it's 11 or 12 years. There is no question that this report is important for posterity. It is important that leaders in the future read, that they read the 7,000 pages, that they look at the 32,000 footnotes. We don't draw judgments in the report. What we do is report the fact of the effectiveness of this kind of torture. So the people that are now talking about this kind of torture and saying, oh, they want to bring it back, should know that when you're dealing with ideologues, this is not effective. And I very much appreciated what General Mattis said, because I think he's right. And I can cite cases of interrogation where information was gotten. For example, Ali Soufan in the case of the blind sheik. This is a while ago, but he got enough information so that the blind sheik that bombed that earlier, not the 9/11 bombing, but the one that took place
the World Trade
earlier,
Center in '93, right?
Yeah, that he pled guilty and is serving a life sentence. So good techniques do work. Waterboarding does not.
And finally, when Hillary Clinton came to the Hill for the portrait unveiling of Harry Reid, you took the opportunity to take her out to dinner. How is she doing?
Well, we had a very quiet dinner, just the two of us, in my hideaway, and I am extraordinarily fond of this woman. And I think it's fair to say that she's hurting. She is brave, emotional, in the sense of her values, her care, her concern. And as I think all of us know who watched that campaign, it was a very hard campaign for her. The name-calling, the email intrusion, the misinterpretation of what she had done with emails, 11 hours in front of a committee while she was a candidate. And she stood up to it all. And so I think she has a spine of steel, and I think she's going to come through this fine. But I think this is really a tough time for a wonderful human being.
Well, Dianne Feinstein, thanks for sharing with us. Thank you very
you.
much. And a happy holiday to you and yours.